some real education. The Colossus of Rhodes was a statue of the Greek sun god Helios, erected in the city of Rhodes by Chares of Lindos in 280 BC. One of the seven wonders of the ancient world, it was constructed to celebrate the city's successful defense from a tyrant who had besieged it for a year with a large army and navy. According to most contemporary descriptions, the Colossus stood approximately 108 feet high, which is the approximate height of the modern Statue of Liberty, from feet to crown. This made Colossus the tallest statue in the ancient world. It collapsed during the earthquake of 226 BC, although parts of it were actually preserved.
So it's only around for a few decades. But if you take a look at the picture, Mike, that's the one. Brilliant imagery where you could actually sail into the town through the legs of the great Colossus, right? And if you go to the next one, if you get a sense of that image. Now, these are all art images of modern artists. We don't know what it looked like. We don't have the residue of that statue. So we don't know exactly what it would have looked like. And you can see in this one, the statue does not straddle the bay. So go to the previous one, it was thought that maybe the ships would sail underneath it. You go to the other artist renditions, not necessarily. We don't know. To be quite frank with you, the idea that a statue the size of the Statue of Liberty would accommodate rather large vessels to get underneath it that way would be impractical. It's probably more like this. But looking at that picture, we see the crown on the head of the Colossus, and you can begin to see what the parallels are between the statue of the ancient Colossus and the one that would become the Statue of Liberty. Both monuments were built as symbols of freedom. The Statue of Liberty has been referred to as a modern Colossus and is 34 meters tall, roughly the same size as the Colossus of Rhodes. There is also a plaque inside the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty that is inscribed with a sonnet called "The New Colossus, not like the brazen giant of Greek fame," right? This symbol, both were meant to talk about the liberation, but the special immigration status of the Statue of Liberty makes it somewhat different. There has been a debate among historians about whether the statue was standing on one foot or straddling. Some have discounted this theory and believe that it stood in a more usual Greek pose on the side of the harbor. If the Colossus was built with its legs straddling, as we said before, would make it there would have been different repercussions when the statue finally fell during the earthquake. The statue was actually built with an iron frame, and over this, the Rhodians used carved and sculptured brass plates to create the outer structures of Helios. That's who it is. The statue, the Colossus, is Helios, the god of the sun, which is why the crown looks to be like radiating beams of the sun, which is also a trope that was adopted by the creator of the Statue of Liberty. The architect of the Colossus, as Katie reminded you, was Chares of Lindos, a student of the very famous, perhaps the most famous sculptor in the ancient world, Lysippus, who had previously created a 19-meter tall statue of Zeus. And in the 7th century, a little bit more history, the Arabs conquered Rhodes, dismantled what was left of the statue, and sold it for scrap metal, right? There's a cultural lesson in there somewhere. I'm not going to make it the moment.